stapled visas, the latest Chinese provocation. Although not a new one, they've done it before. China is issuing stapled visas for Arunachal Pradesh. And their targets this time are Indian athletes. You see, China is hosting the World University Games. A martial arts team from India was going to participate. This is the Indian Wushu team. They have 8 members. 3 of them are from Arunachal Pradesh. All of them applied for Chinese visas, but the 3 athletes from Arunachal got stapled visas. So the entire team has pulled out. They will not go for the tournament. And like I said, China has done this before. It's an old trick of theirs to harass the people of Arunachal Pradesh and to provoke India. But why does China do it? Because it says the entire state of Arunachal Pradesh belongs to them. They call it South Tibet. One problem though, their claim has no basis in fact. The whole world accepts India's sovereignty on Arunachal. But when China wants to reignite this dispute, it resorts to such tactics. The question is, why do it now? More importantly, how should India respond? For starters, India has at least acknowledged that this happened. New Delhi has lodged a protest. They've called the move quote-unquote unacceptable, which is right, but hardly enough. Mere condemnation is not taking us anywhere. The app bans and the trade restrictions have had a limited impact. So what should New Delhi do? Is it time for India to change its approach? On Vantage tonight, we'll discuss this. First, let's bring you more details of the case, starting with what are staple visas and why they're so controversial. Now, if you have a passport and you've traveled overseas, you know how visas work. They're usually printed on one page of your passport. In some cases, the issuing country uses a sticker. The idea is for the visa to stay on your passport permanently. Now, some countries even stamp them. They stamp the visas. They do this in addition to the printing or the sticker. This is the standard practice. But staple visas do not work that way. They are attached with pins or staples to your passport. They can be torn off or detached. And they're used to make a point. Staple visas are basically a political tool. China started using them in the year 2005. Not every Indian citizen who applied got a visa like this. China gave such visas to Indians from Arunachal Pradesh and in some cases to Indians from Jammu and Kashmir. This happened in 2008 and 2009. But their target mostly has been Arunachal Pradesh. How does it help Beijing? This is their twisted way of sending a message that Arunachal Pradesh is a part of China. So if you're visiting from there, you don't actually need a visa. That's what they're trying to say, and this is problematic on many levels. It's a challenge to India's sovereignty, also a national security issue. Because the staple visas are just one part of the story. China repeatedly undermines India's position on Arunachal. It issues Chinese names for Indian cities and releases controversial maps. So far, 3 such lists have been issued. The first one was in 2017, the second in 2021, and the third in April this year. 3 months later, the staple visas are back, while the situation at the border remains unchanged. This week, we heard from the Chinese again. They talked about what they call the Bali Consensus. We reported about it earlier this week. There was a meeting in Johannesburg. India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval met Wang Yi, who has now returned as China's foreign minister, Wang Yi. Now, Doval told Wang Yi that Chinese provocations have eroded trust. In response, China spoke about a consensus between Modi and Xi. The 2 leaders spoke last year at the G20 summit in Bali. There's a video of them shaking hands. India was asked about this encounter last year. India played it down, saying they were just exchanging courtesies. But now India is offering a completely different version. Listen to this.
With regard to the question relating to the handshake between the Prime Minister and President Xi Jinping, I will only say that Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping, who were both attending the G20 dinner yesterday, hosted by the Indonesian president, exchanged courtesies at the conclusion of the dinner.
During the Bali G20 summit last year, Prime Minister and President Xi Jinping, at the conclusion of the dinner hosted by the Indonesian president, exchanged courtesies and spoke of the need to stabilize our bilateral relations. So that's the statement I'm making. I think Foreign Secretary did mention, maybe he didn't mention the second part of it. He did talk about exchanging courtesies and I think there was the general discussion or spoke of the need for stabilize our bilateral relationship or relations.
Was this discussed in the same exchange of courtesies, or was there a separate meeting between Modi and Xi Jinping in Bali? No side is prepared to divulge more details right now, but whatever be the case, it has made virtually no difference to the relationship. It has not stabilized the relationship. The border standoff has not been resolved. And now China is testing India on another front, Arunachal Pradesh. Clearly, dialogue and diplomacy have not worked. So is it time for India to try a different approach, to consider some retaliatory options? And what will those look like? China is issuing staple visas. So what is stopping India from doing the same? Issue staple visas to the people of Tibet who want to come to India. And this won't be without precedent. It is done in cases where passports and visas are not recognized. One of the most notable examples is that of Israel. Before the normalization wave, multiple Arab nations refused to stamp or recognize Israeli passports. Some countries still do it, like Iran, Kuwait, Lebanon, Libya, Syria, Saudi Arabia, even Pakistan. These countries do not recognize Israeli passports. In some cases, passport holders with an Israeli visa are not even admitted. They're denied entry. So there are ways to respond proportionally. It is only a matter of intent. Otherwise, you can issue one more statement, ban one more app, and remain stuck in this impasse.